Good afternoon, everyone. So for coming for this session, I was just doing a little bit of a reading and trying to prepare myself. And I said, because this is like audience which has a lot of experience, and what more can we add to what you already know about? So I was just reading through a United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda so where the requirement is 2019, I looked at beyond 2019. It says that, engaging women and men and across generation is something which is very, very important for the success of the organizations. And that's also going to help secure our future. We have very experienced panelists on the dais, and I thought, and I have ladies only, so the gender is truly not represented on the dais. So I thought that I must ask two of my colleagues on the dais to really share the journey as successful women leaders. And if there were headwinds, what were they and how have you really sustained them across the stage?
This is working. All right, good afternoon, post-lunch session. I don't know how many of you are awake. I'm not. Clearly not. But then, great to be with all of you all. Thank you, Priti, for moderating this session, and thank you, People Matters. Thank you, Esther, for having us here. Whenever I get asked this question, talk about yourself, you're a woman leader, talk about yourself and reflect, it does two things to me. The first thing it does to me is, it's a sense of gratification. It's a hard-earned title, leader. Right? So the first thing it does to me is I shut my eyes and I think of any and every person I worked with in the past and so many organizations that I've worked for. And I thank them to be making me worthy of this word that is associated with me, which is a leader. So that's the first thing that happens to me, deep sense of gratification. Second thing it does, Priti, is, I feel old. You start asking these questions to lifetime achievement people, right, on stages. So it makes you feel kind of run down. But then, so I'll tell you what has been my journey briefly. About 25 years of work. And as I roll back, it started out when I was a child. I remember my mom telling me, planting seeds of leadership, I guess, in me by saying stuff like, some leaders are born women. So I did not understand the statement when she said this. But it deeply resonated with me, as I went on in my journey, when she said some leaders are born women. So it stayed with me, deeply entrenched. She also taught me that as important as skills like tenacity, strength, power, intuitiveness, decisiveness is important in a corporate world, she also taught me that being a woman, the emotion and the EQ that you bring on the table is very important, and that's what is the differentiator. So I've carried that through in my life, in my 25 years of service now. It helps, I think, to have that emotional quotient with your teams and your businesses. So that has helped me steer my career journey. Been fortunate to bring to this world two lovely daughters who I have. They are fairly accomplished in their own world, and that is my biggest asset. You asked me if there was any headwind, Priti. There hasn't been any challenge other than trust me. The only challenge that I have seen in my career is me, myself. And when I say that, all I mean is each time that there was a headwind, it was me who told myself, this is not something you can do. Otherwise, there hasn't been any headwind really, there has been no challenge. I come from a school of thought where leadership doesn't mean power. Leadership means vision, responsibility, a very deep sense of responsibility towards the teams that work with you, towards your businesses. And as my boss sitting in New York tells me all the time, we are the underwriters of corporate. And that's a great tag to have, being a talent acquisition person, right? So that has kept me very, very motivated. Also, another thing that I have seen in my journey is competition and comparison. This is something which has never disrupted me, never has distracted me, because I was too captivated with purpose, I guess. You could talk about some headwinds in the name of some managers you work for. Never a headwind, because every manager taught me the do's and don'ts of life, and I'm ever so grateful to them. So 25 years here I am, continuing to grow others and stop growing myself, because I think what I owe to everybody now is growing people around. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Priyanka. Would you have anything to add, Swati?
I think resonate a lot with what Priyanka just said. honestly, women, men, it really doesn't matter. I think a lot of the challenges, like Priyanka said, is probably within yourself. As long as you have an organization that supports you, as long as you have a family that supports you, mothers and women around you have very strong personalities, everything is going for you. So honestly, haven't felt a challenge at all. Have been in organizations where women constituted more than, in fact, currently with Myntra, where 40%, more than 40% of the HR team is actually women, 30% overall. So always been surrounded by women leaders. So I felt one of them, never faced a challenge per se.
Thank you. So that's important.
Priti, what about yourself? How has it been for you?
So I'm also part of the same league, so I unfortunately have never had those situations where I narrate that I came from a background where I was always encouraged. We're a sibling of 4 at house. I'm the eldest, but I was never stopped to chase my dreams, and here I am. And the geographies, the time zones have never been a constraint, so I've worked in India, outside India. All of that has been great. I do want to pick up one of the themes that is coming from both of you, saying leaders build leaders. And this is the forum talking about the talent acquisition, and I see that the element of hiring the potential employees who could be successful leaders is also as irrespective of the gender that you kind of both of are alluding to. Talking about, because the topic here today is beyond gender and generations, and I'll reverse the sequence that we discussed. Since we're talking about the genders, and I've heard great stuff about cities, initiatives about, really ensuring that men and women, although you have a program which is focused on women more, about their second careers. Would you be able to talk a little bit more about, Priyanka?
Yeah, so who doesn't know diversity as front and center for any organization? I'm sure all of you all see the increased focus, continued focus, renewed focus on diversity. When I say continued focus, it's about gender in India, all right. But then there are organizations, including the one that I represent, Citi, that has gone beyond gender. But I'll talk about the Second Careers program, which I'm very passionate about. Citi started this journey sometime early last year. I was not a part of the bank then, but then I was told that there was a mandate given to hire about 20 to 25 women who are returning to the workforce. They started on that journey. I joined sometime mid last year. And by virtue of a program which was not just focused, it was also in partnership with Jobs for Her, which was a very rich experience for her, I guess. I was at the event at Bangalore some time back. And they're doing a great job. I don't know if anyone from Jobs for Her here. If yes, then please take my compliments back because I think the work that they're doing to bring back women into the workforce after their much-deserved sabbatical, for whichever reason, right? I think that's a great service to the society. So they became our partners. And we hired last year 108 women across our ICG, consumer and retail, global functions, and enterprise ONT businesses. And 108, while it just sounds like a number, trust me, it was mammoth. It was mammoth only because the throughput could not be ascertained on day one. As you will understand, these are all women who were on sabbatical from 1 to 5 years. Interestingly, I remember a session I was doing at Chennai with these women, about 21 of them in the room, and late last year. And I said, what was the best thing, coming and joining Citi? So one of them very innocently told me, you know what, nobody asked us, why did I take a sabbatical? Nobody asked me, why did I take a sabbatical? And that was really endearing for me. So thank you, Citi, for not asking me the reason and welcoming me back. So not only is she back, we have a program, a very robust program of 3 months of training for these people so that we can, identify which business to bring them into. And all of them are successful. The attrition in that space is hardly any, because in the very first year I expected some attrition to happen if women are not able to cope up. But then we've been able to have zero attrition in that space. And taking on from that journey, Citi continues its focus this year. Hopefully we should do a century and more again.
Yeah, thank you. And if I could add, I represent Mastercard on the dais. Mastercard has taken a journey of, we are very big on diversity and inclusion. Our global CEO, Jabong, is very passionate about the whole theme around diversity and inclusion, and the way that we kind of says, there are two words that really resonate with each one of us, because the third gender is not being, now being also talked about. So we talk about respect, and also we talk about decency coefficient. And amongst these two things, what we have come up as a theme, which is very generic, which is beyond gender, we say better together. We want to have both the genders, and one day the third gender, once it gets recognized, we want to have a better together. And most of our themes around the diversity and inclusions are focused around ensuring that we are equal halves in whatever we do. So we've come up with a campaign which has got men and women with, balancing, equal halves. And we have a similar program, we call it Relaunch Your Career. Relaunch Your Career, and it's for men and women both. People who have taken break for 2 years plus, and they want to come back to the corporate world. We have 12 months to 12 weeks of, a journey that we take them on the development plan. It's also the maturity of their individuals. What we found was men and women, they took a sabbatical because there could be situation with men as well, because of various personal reasons, whether they were the primary caregivers or whatsoever the reason could have been, that they were away from work, and they are quite senior leaders. So we said for them to put them on a 3 weeks or a 12 months journey would have been very, very difficult. So we have a program 12 weeks to 12 months, and we put them onto some special development action and initiatives, and we bring them as the FTEs. So for us, when we hire, we're hiring anywhere from a manager to a director to a VP who has taken a break. So that's like a very successful program. Would you, Swati, talk about a little bit about what is diversity? And you spoke to me before the session that you're talking about diversity beyond men and women. What is that Myntra is looking at?
And just to add to the examples that both of you just spoke about, so our numbers in terms of women coming back after sabbatical is probably not as high as hundreds, but that's also an area that we are focusing heavily on. In fact, what becomes critical for their success is how we stay engaged with them while they're on sabbatical, Absolutely. Right? So about a month or 2 months prior they're coming back from their sabbatical, keeping them engaged, understanding what are the kind of roles they've been interested in. And then once they're on board, creating an environment that nurtures them and supports them through the process, because they've gone through a process where they've been away from work. So I think that becomes extremely critical. But to your point, Priti, in terms of diversity, I think for Myntra, diversity is is a topic which is beyond gender.
Sure.
I think when you actually talk about Myntra Jabong, it is a fashion technology organization, right? So the first thing that comes to mind is the diversity of talent per se that we have, right? So right brain and left brain, right? Yeah. Fashion and technology, and how diverse can you get beyond that? So for us, maintaining that balance becomes very important. The other area where we are doing we are bringing in diverse workforce is bringing in specially abled people, especially in our warehouses. That's working out very well. The third element is where we're trying to bring in people who are from a different social or economic strata. Yeah. So we have a program which we call Mensa, wherein we bring on board people who can help us with last mile deliveries. So you're really bringing on board a strata which you probably don't find in corporate houses, right? So it's a lot of diversity in terms of people who are with very different social and economic backgrounds. And thirdly, of course, is women, where we are bringing in a lot more women in the warehouses. That has led to lower attrition, higher productivity, and as well as in the corporate workplace. So about 30% of our women actually is women.
Is women.
And talking stats on gender diversity, and we largely talk gender, I was surprised that Citi has almost 42% of the board members, the management committee is women. So I think, a constant struggle always for corporates is you're able to meet your numbers of X percentage at junior or mid-level, but at a senior level, having, that kind of a gender diverse representation it was very refreshing for me. Citi continues to impact in that area. So while our diversity is pretty low as compared to you, Swati, it's 31% as you and I speak across the organization. We are slated to take it to a 34 this year. And that should tell you what kind of hiring targets I have and my team has, for 2019. But at senior levels, we are sitting at 19%. And that is pretty good, I would think, for a bank of our size. I just want to add that
In
point.
fact, that's an area where we need to get better. Our senior leadership right now does not have any diversity. So that's a charter that we are carrying for ourselves in terms of how do we bring in diversity at senior level.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's quite insightful. Are there any specific talent acquisition interventions that you put in place when you're talking about the specially able resources that when you go and hire?
Not really. I think what we need to be clear in terms of, there are obviously going to be certain roles that will work for them. That's not going to work from there. So I think just being conscious of where we can leverage their strengths and utilize them to the maximum, that's more important. Beyond that, honestly, a lot of these people we've just reached out to them and they've been very open in terms of joining us. The numbers are still small, but there's no special intervention per se, no.
That sounds really great. So moving to the next topic, because this is beyond gender and generations. So what are the advantages? So we all have generations at play. So we've heard Gen Z, Gen Y, and Gen X, and baby boomers, etc. And while this panel represents more of Gen Y and Gen Z getting in there, but there are generations that we have to manage and we have to attract in our respective organizations. So Priyanka, what would your advice be, or what would your thoughts be around having multi-generational organization workforce, and what is advantages around it?
Right, so let me again throw stats. Look, I'm a recruiter at heart. I'll always talk numbers. I don't go beyond numbers. So Citi has about 70% workforce as millennials. The average age here is 27 years. Average median is 27 years, all right? So not many people like me working for Citi, clearly. And the trend continues because it's an interesting blend of, I think, it's not just generational workforce and generational mindset that we have. We also have a multicultural mindset, and maybe we'll cover some other day as to how Citi focuses on a multicultural aspect as well of building the workforce. So having given those numbers, why multi-generational workforce? I think it's a little behind us now. It's a dated topic. But what I can tell you is the advantages. It's a clear competitive advantage. I think so many of you, all of you sitting in this room, you all represent corporates where multi-generational is a yesteryear thing, right? So I think the first advantage that I see with lived experience, I don't have anything which is beyond anecdotal for me. Lived experience is look at my team. While I sit here, as a think tank, you do strategy, you devise recruitment strategies, recruitment models, you develop, winning org structures. At the same time, the next layer, right, the millennials, they're the ones who get to the front, they execute, they deliver. And then we have those freshers, the interns who come in with a very innovative mindset. Trust me, they keep me young, and I look forward to getting in interns in my team because they come in with not just smart ideas, they come in with a mindset to question you. They question status quo. And that is something which millennials don't do adequately. But the interns, the Gen Z, do we call them Gen Z? They come with a mindset where they come and they question you on why, how, where, and what can I do, So I love that aspect of them. It's a great balance. I think to cover the first point for a corporate, it's a great balance of skill and talent. Second, very important one, I touched upon it briefly, is innovation. Every organization, at least in Citi, I'm seeing the intern population that we get in every year. We hire about 728 numbers from campuses, from different campuses, business schools and technology schools. And we hired 64 analysts who are all management grads. And these are all the sharpest minds, on the IMs of the world. And they come and really make significant impact in business. Right? So we see that as a clear competitive advantage. Second part of it is every organization is able to have an internal bench. Think about it. When you have a multi-generational workforce, look at the organic capability of the organization to build succession. Citi has an internal mobility of almost 68% at senior levels, which means we manufacture leaders within ourselves for ourselves. Right? So that is another advantage that I see. I also think a small point to make, but then, we do a 24/7 cover because a particular generation is good to work odd times, odd hours, and your shop really doesn't close. So that's another advantage I see of multi-generational workforce. And last but not the least, mentoring. Mentoring. So within the organization, you have a wealth of experience, and then you have these nimble minds, the flexibility of mentoring those people to bring them, not just assimilate them as a part of your workforce, but to develop them as future leaders. The point that I alluded to earlier when I was talking about myself, how much are you growing people? How much do you carry as you climb? So that happens, when you have multiple generations and the 5 generations that we are accommodating in corporates today. So clearly a competitive advantage. And you know what, any one of you who wants to talk about anything else, don't take it just as 3 of us talking. Anybody wants to add any point to what we are talking, please feel free to do that.
Thanks, Priyanka. Would you have any inputs?
I think just building on to what Priyanka said, so for us also, 70% of our workforce is under 30 years. So you are dealing with very young talent. And I think what becomes important is, for that kind of talent is, what do you do differently in terms of attracting them and inducting them? Because for them, they need to see outcome immediately, right? So speed is of essence to them. That means whatever you're doing in terms of hiring, you need to be really fast in terms of getting them on board. The other thing that we're trying to do differently, especially on the campus side, is how do we onboard them? So we have a very experiential onboarding program. So they don't necessarily go through a classroom discussion, but they actually go on the ground. So they would go visit warehouses, they would go and visit our Center of Excellence where we do a lot of innovation. We did an innovation challenge for them where we actually threw up business cases at them and got them to think of what we could do differently as an organization. So I think figuring out ways in terms of how are you going to attract them soon enough and giving them the right experience in the first few months becomes very critical, because for them, that is the hook in terms of staying connected with the organization and staying engaged with the organization.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. So the mentoring bit from the senior leaders in the organization, younger talent coming in, challenging the status quo, and also representing Mastercard on the diocese. We do believe very strongly in the innovation. And for us, being we're not selling cards, so like Apple doesn't sell apples, we don't sell cards. We're a fintech organization, we're a lot more in technology. So what we've done is we kind of have set up the start paths, we incubate a lot of startups, and we also have, so we've tied up, cyber intelligence is one of the areas that we're kind of working much aggressively on. What we've done is already we've tied up with Washington University to really have a tailor-made program that kind of supports learning and development and upskilling about what the cyber intelligence is all about. And we're in conversation with IIT Delhi actually to really set up that program. So what I want to say is, while generation is an important element, and my 2 co-panelists are saying that, at some point of time, and that gender, the generation, etc., gets smudged when it comes to the ensuring of the success of the organization, or seeing what the future organizations would look like, future models would look like, right? On that note, I'd like to, unless my co-panelists have more inputs, I'd like to open the forum for any questions that you would have for either of us sitting here.
Sure.
Hi, am I audible? Okay. My name is Nitin Sunwalka. I'm from Sopra Steria. My query is regarding Returning Mothers program. So it is actually laudable, and in fact, we also have similar program. So the query which I have is, are there any practical do's and don'ts we have evolved for this program? For example, do you send those staff back to the original teams? How do you decide about the compensation, designation? So if you can share some tips and some rules which you would have developed for this program.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do's and don'ts, not really, right? But then when you decide that you're getting them back, I think the first thing that you need to cut out is bias as to where. So it could be wherever. I'll give you the example of the 108, right? I don't think there were tailor-made roles for them, which could be called low complexity, if you will. Yeah, there were no tailor-made roles for them. So we didn't have roles per se at that point in time. We said we're going to get them in. We assessed their skills that they had on the resume earlier, and then we, honed them more into the skills that we are looking for. After the training program of 3 months, they get assimilated into the business. Now, which business, how do you make that choice? That would also be basis their own interest and what they brought to the table. Another thing you talked about was compensation. Absolutely no difference. So any hire that we would make at that grade, at that level, for a particular role or not, I think we decided that we are going to bring the person at least the min of the salary grid. So just like other organizations, Citi also has its internal salary grid, and which has quartiles. So we try to get them in at that particular level. Many a times the salary level of the person coming in was way higher. The earlier salary was way higher than our min. So we never then stuck to the min of the grid. We did take them at an X percentage more to keep them motivated. From a do's perspective though, I mean, I don't have clearly defined do's and don'ts, but one of the things that you must do is never make them feel like they're the backbenchers and they have come in to be working with the more smarter minds. So this training program that you have should not be 100% training days. It should be 50% throughput in terms of their contribution to businesses and 50% training program.
Thank you.
I'd echo the same thing. Education and exposure are the two elements during the training program that we've identified. That's the investment that I would say is definitely a do. Sorry, you were saying something.
And then make your I think the culture in the organization should be such that not only are you welcoming them, you have to enable, you have to bring in quite a few enablers, right? So at Citi, a woman holding the hand of a small little kid is a common sight. So we have this, I won't call it a program, but there's flexibility for them to get their children to the bank after their crash hours, or if they don't have any support, we completely encourage that. We work on flexible timings as well for them because they're just getting back after their sabbatical. So the empathy quotient has to be the biggest do, and rest everything falls in place.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Priti. I represent Teleperformance. My question is, Swati, to you. You spoke about, bringing in the specially abled people, and I know you would have done a lot of work around making life and work environment, convenient for them. My question is more around: were there any things, any specific things that you did to manage the ecosystem around, not for the people who you were hiring who were specially abled, but for the other staff, to make sure that they welcome them the same way that you had as a vision in the organization?
Honestly, nothing, because I firmly believe if you create more of it, you're trying to differentiate in some way or the other, right? So the best thing is to just let them come in and flow in within the ecosystem. So didn't take any special initiatives in terms of keeping the other employees informed or aware of something different that we are doing. If you can get them naturally into the ecosystem, that's the best way to do it.
But I'd like to add, so while it's one of the past organizations that we had a small team for accounts payable. These were specially able people who were hearing impaired, and they were like super brilliant, intelligent folks. Set of 15 people. We engaged with the firm. I can take the name. It's Vishesh. They worked very closely with us, and they kind of helped us identify these 15 people. We did have a very detailed, tailor-made orientation session for others. Because when we're bringing, I think one of the important things is also the organizations. So maybe that organization that I was supporting was a shared service center, and it had all kinds of people. So how do you not really be disrespectful? So I spoke about respect and decency coefficient, which is at Mastercard, but it's something that is core to everywhere. So culturally orienting them, you don't want to really say something or express that points out that they are hearing impaired. You want to, and that's where orientation was run for people who were closely working with those set of people. So that's one of the needs, and when you tie up with one of such organizations, they come up with proposal that these are the options that you should definitely consider.
That's interesting. In fact, I think as we go scale with this thing, we probably need to think something about that. Yeah.
Can I just add to the point that you're making? We call it differently abled. Right? Specially abled. Better way to put it is specially abled. PWD, people with disabilities, right? All of this, all of us sitting in this room who fortunately don't have any visible disability, I think we have our own disabilities which we are good at hiding at, And they're not good at hiding those disabilities. The moment you have that in mind, that we are also disabled in some way, but we are masters at hiding it, and they are able to hide it, will immediately knock off the distinction between differently abled and normal people like us. Trust me, I have seen that work for myself. I've had a differently able person work for me in my previous organization, where I learned most of my diversity learnings are from that organization. And trust me, there was no distinction. We never paid special attention to them either. Yeah, but there was always at the back of our mind this thought that you have to enable the environment for them. You have to engage with them far more than you would have with anybody else.
Hi, my name is Rekha Singh and I represent JP Morgan. So my question is for Priyanka and Priti. So, we talk about diversity and inclusion and consciously we don't want to do in that differentiation, right? Last year with the article release, the LGBT community, there's a lot of article floating on internet on how we can encourage their hiring, how can we have people coming out of cupboard. That is one question. The other question is, any initiative around the veteran hiring? The military, the army, force, any initiative around those hirings that we are doing. Just to elaborate the diversity and inclusion.
I'll take a stab at it. Mastercard has started. So we do have something called business resource groups. We called that business resource group as Pride. And we're looking at, we do have a global BRG. And globally, there's a lot more acceptance about LGBTQs, right? And we are setting up a similar chapter in India. It's a journey that we are kind of getting onto. It's an area, there's a taboo, at least in our country. People don't want to disclose their sexual orientation or whatever it is. So we're getting onto that. Other than that, I wouldn't have much to add in terms of LGBTQ that we would like to. So I think, first of all, and I can share what we are putting in place, a program or as to next steps looking like. So first of all, we're creating an environment where we're saying we're accepting the acceptance. And we have global leaders who identify themselves. So we're getting them to our forums in India where they speak openly about it, that it doesn't matter, we respect everyone in the organization. So people in our employee sets are able to recognize themselves. So people will not. So we have to create that platform for them to really recognize themselves. And then we go in and start the talent acquisition related initiatives, because there's still going to be a fear or kind of I would say a road or a mental block that what if people, they don't treat me respectfully. So we're on that journey. We're not very mature and don't want to really make a comment where we're not really yet ready. Priyanka, what do you have?
Yeah, so I think Pride Network is, it's pretty popular today. We call it the Pride Network as well. With Citi, we launched it recently. And the journey is two-way, right? So one is about your internal workforce. The other is about who are you hiring. Hiring always goes on to numbers. I think the internal cultural change that Priti alluded to, that's a bigger challenge today, and that's a bigger one for every business leader to be thinking about. So you can launch the network. You can call it Pride. You can have marches. You can have, we had recently a flash mob. We had plays on the bank, to come and sensitize everybody about LGBT. That was done with an intent to bring people out in the open to disclose their sexual preference. I think that's the first thing that we are attacking today more than hiring, right? Absolutely. Which is to build a culture where there is acceptance to an extent that anyone and everyone who does represent that side of preference is able to at least come out. And it's unfortunately become a check-in-the-box kind of work for every organization. We are listing out those people and we are calling out numbers. Okay, this week, we have so many more disclosures. It's sad when we do that, though. So we're taking it slowly in Citi. But from a hiring perspective, I have consciously chosen not to agree with my diversity council on a hard-coded target for LGBT because, firstly, I think we have to make those strides, those changes in the culture. Yeah. The moment that happens, then consciously, with interventions, we will perhaps attack, hiring that set of people. But right now, I think I'm requesting my organization and my stakeholders to first take care of the employees and find out, who are the representatives over there, build that culture so that you become an employer of choice tomorrow. Today we have nothing really to go out on the street to talk about. I cannot go and say, look, I have a hiring target of 3%, which was given to me, by the way, Rekha. 3% of your hiring should be LGBT, and it did not resonate with me at all. So how about first understanding, absorbing the definition of what we are trying to create in the name of introducing a third
Gender.
Third angle to diversity, which all of us are talking about. It'll take a little more time in India, I guess. But great, and I'm so happy that we are already on that march. I have 2 of my team members who belong to the LGBT community, and trust me, they're so much fun, and they're so much happier after everything has been launched and everything has been legal. So I look forward to that journey.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Rekha, could we answer?
My next question was around, India probably is the 2nd or 3rd largest military base, right? The retired set of population. Are we doing or are we trending towards to do anything about them?
Very consciously. Very consciously. You come from JP Morgan, where veteran hiring is, I think it's a daily thing for you, it's routine, right? Veteran hiring is old in JP Morgan. They have been talking about it for last 3 to 4 years that I remember, right? And I wouldn't remember the numbers now, but I do know that there have been smart strides in that direction. I can talk about Citi. We are not taking any conscious steps towards that, but we have so many veterans in the bank, even in divisions like CSIS, right, where wealth of a diverse experience is what we need. We have personnel working over there. We have some people from BSF who have joined the CSC network not last year, 2017. It's just that we haven't been calling them out. So in the name of veteran hiring, we perhaps have not put our focus, there's no spotlight on it yet, but I think internally we do have quite a few veterans in the bank.
We have a question at the back, and we're also up on the time, so we'll quickly take that last question.
I just wanted to add on the diversity that, to me, I believe diversity is not just about the gender equality. It's about to have the equal ratio of the gender. When you're discussing about the organization roadmaps and the discussions to bring women and men, on the table and have a better discussion in terms of organization goals. And I just want to add on that, they have a different roles in the society when you talk about men's and women, so they bring the different perspectives all together, because I believe a mother knows, what the motherhood is all about, right? She can have that deeper understanding. So that's important, and few of the do's which I encourage every talent acquisition leader to do in order to bring diversity in the talent acquisition and to help your organizations to bring more diverse and inclusive culture. Number first, that we should not add the biased job descriptions anywhere. When you talk about the roles you are hiring for, that's the most important part. Number second, that we should have the mixed set of panelists, when we would like to have interview a particular candidate, so that they should not have the biased discussions and the biased feedback altogether. And we should encourage, as a talent acquisition leader, to our recruiters to, have a proper training on to bring on the more talent, especially from the women's point of view. Another most important platform, which is important from HR perspective, if HR people are also sitting here, apart from talent acquisition, that we should also learn from our exit interviews that why, people are leaving, especially if they are women's or men's, to be able to come to know more about how can we add the value, how can we change in the policies and bring a better work culture. And we should also have the, good policies, especially when you talk about the work flexibility, work schedule, so that we can encourage more women altogether.
I couldn't agree more with you.
Sorry?
We really agree with each one of the comments that you made.
In fact, you should have been here on the dais.
Actually,
Yes.
no, actually, the reason why I'm speaking here, because the best part is that I recently wrote an article on gender diversity, and it has been published in iamsjob.com. May 2019 magazine. You can have a look, all of you, and I just thought to bringing up my point of view as well, and it is especially a pleasure to be part of this whole full set of people, talented people, and thank you so much.
Thank you for your insights. Those were like we all echo with what you just said, and hopefully we all practice in our respective organizations. So thank you for your insight. Thank you for being a lovely audience, and we wish we had more time. We hope that you got some insights on beyond gender and generation. We three, while we were having a conversation with People Matters, did think this conversation could have been around diversity and inclusion, and more so about inclusion because it covers the wider spectrum, but we understood that this title was already out. So here we are, and any concluding remarks from my panelists? Otherwise, we'd like to say thank you for your time and patience and sharing your insights as well with us.
We're good. Thank you, Priti.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Priyanka, Priti, and Swati. What an absolutely amazing discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.